In this tutorial, we're going to look at adding jumping to our core template, and we'll also put in some ground that we can jump from. This is the beginning of putting together a game, something like Super Mario or Sonic the Hedgehog, or even one of the originals, Donkey Kong, which allows us to move side to side, jumping over objects, and then progressing through our levels. To do this, we're going to add gravity to our game, and everything will then become two-dimensional in our flat world, where we have up and down being height-wise, and then left to right as we had before. So one of the things that we will also do is to comment out our up and down keys, since these will no longer work in a normal way, and instead we will add a jump button to make that happen. So I'm going to go here to the Birkdale School Replit teams and go down to the team projects and go to number 9, customize core for your own game. When you click on that, it will fork the main template for you. I have to do this manually, so I will do that by going here and choosing to fork. You shouldn't need to do this. So at the moment, our standard code allows us to move around in any direction, and it also allows us to bounce off of the walls. And we have some random zombies who jiggle about in a random walk and are not allowed to leave the edges of the screen. So this is our basic functionality at the moment. We also get a score for hitting the zombies with the cop, more score for higher speed. So we're going to go to main.py and we're going to start to make our changes to the game. So I'm going to do this just above where we generate our NPC list. I'm going to add some constants in there rather than just above the game loop. So I'm going to put in here gravity equals 10. Now in our world, gravity is 9.81 meters per second, so 10 is a good approximation, but we can always adjust this to make for a better game, and we don't have to have it entirely realistic. The next thing we're going to have is a ground height. And the ground height could be anything, but I'm going to make it a multiple of the standard size, so that's 64. I'm going to make a ground height of 16, so a quarter of a person's size. Okay, so we've set up our gravity and our ground height. We now need to go and adjust the events part of the program to prevent the user from pressing up and down keys effectively, but also to add a space key for jumping. So I'm scrolling down to this section here, and it says, the helpful comment, handle any other user events such as keys or mouse. And I'm going to go here to my key up, and I'm going to comment that out. And my key down and comment that out, but helpfully I have code here that I can uncomment for the space key to then give me minus 10 times gravity, and it says tweak the multiplier as needed. And you can see that in my original I've said minus 5 times gravity. You might be wondering why it's a minus number here. Gravity acts downwards towards the center of the planet, and when we jump, we do the opposite of that. We go up the way, away from the center of the planet. So that's what's going on there. We now need to draw the ground in so that we can see what's going on. So that's just a simple rectangle. It's going to be on the screen in red, and it starts from the corner of the screen. So it's 0 on the X direction. We're going to draw it at the height of the screen, but minus how tall the ground is. So that should take it up from the bottom of the screen. and then it's going to be the same width as the screen, and it's going to have a height based on our constant ground height. So I'm coming down to my code and finding my draw section. I'll just close this up to make it easier to read. Here's my draw section here. I do a screen fill black, so I guess directly after that would be a good time to draw. So I'm going to use PyGame.draw.rect. And you can see that rectangle wants a surface and then a color and then a rectangle value. So the surface I'm going to draw on is the screen. And then the color I'm going to use is red, which I have got defined up at the top of the screen, at the top of my code. And then I need to give it a rectangle. So I'm going to give it a square brackets here to give it the 4 parameters that I need. So the x-coordinate is 0. We're going to draw it right at the edge of the screen. And then the y-coordinate, how far down the screen are we going to go to draw it? Well, it's going to be max height, but then minus the height of the ground. So ground height. Then we need to give it how wide to draw it. Well, that's an easy one. It's max width because we want it to draw all the way across. And then how tall do we want to draw it? Well, obviously we want to draw it the height of the ground, so ground height. So if we just try that now, just to make sure that everything's fine. So you can see there I have a red block all the way across the bottom of the screen, and that will be our ground. Okay, so the next thing is that the Y speed, instead of being based on what the user's done, we always add gravity. Our speed is always going to be changed by gravity. And when we're off the ground, that means we fall down. And when we're on the ground, then we will stop ourselves running through the ground by making sure that we can never go bigger than our height minus the ground height, and then adjusted for the size of this particular player. So we're looking for the player code here, and it's y equals y plus, and I'm going to put y equals y plus gravity, and I'm just going to comment out the y speed bit there. And then we're going to say if y is bigger than max height minus size, let's put it minus size minus ground height, then y equals max height minus size minus ground height. So we're going to stop ourselves from falling through the ground. And we're not going to bounce off the ground there, so I'm just going to comment at that change in y speed. And you see what happened there was that the player fell to the ground, and now I can move to the left and the right, but the up and down arrows aren't doing anything. The space bar isn't doing anything either. So let's have a look at what's going on there. So if the key is pygame.k space, then y speed equals minus 10 times gravity. Okay. So if we go back and look at our code here, so if we are hitting the ground, we should set y speed to 0. So we should be stopping ourselves when we hit the ground. And otherwise, y equals y plus y speed needs to remain in place. So if we hit the ground, y speed equals 0. But y equals y plus gravity goes here. And y equals y plus y speed can go there. So I can move side to side, and when I press the spacebar, it does an enormous jump to the point where it bangs its head off the ceiling. So what I need to do is to do a little bit of a tweak here. Minus 10 times gravity is a little bit too ambitious, probably because it would have suited a bigger screen. Minus 5 times gravity is still probably too big for this very small screen here. So I'll take that down to minus 3 times gravity. Now obviously if it was minus gravity you would end up hovering in the air. And so I can see what I've done here actually is that I've changed y based on gravity, which is position, but it should be the speed that gets changed by gravity and not your actual location. So gravity changes, accelerates you. So now we're changing y speed by gravity each frame. And now, yeah, I've got a tiny little jump. So actually probably the minus 10 times gravity was sensible, but I was actually changing the wrong thing. So if I press the spacebar now, 10's too much. Let's try 5. So we move, we jump. And you can see now that the jump is giving us about twice the height of the player. It's probably enough to jump over a zombie if we wanted to do that. We could obviously just have a last little tweak here, maybe 7 times gravity. And this number here, the bigger the number that we put in, the higher we will be able to jump. So 7 is almost taking us to the top of the screen, but not quite. So that's probably a decent amount of jumping. Maybe too much, but we'll leave it at that point there. So we have a floor that the player can't go through, and we can leap off that floor and return to it by gravity pulling us back down.